Digital photography has a huge amount of benefits. For me, I love the fact that I can preview an image immediately after taking it and see exactly how the settings I've applied have affected the final outcome. However, I also feel that there's one major drawback. And that drawback is that I don't print anywhere near enough of my images. I had been sending them off to a lab, but that just becomes quite a bit of work and also a little bit of an investment as well. So I decided about 10 years ago just to take the plunge and buy my own printer. So in this video, I thought what we'd do is we'd take a quick look at my process and I'd answer some of the most common questions that I get when it comes to printing at home. Things like, is it worth even having a printer at home? So what are the pros and cons? Getting your image ready. How do you edit your images for printing? Is there any special techniques? And we'll be using Lightroom in particular for that. Sending your image across to your printer, things like color management and how you go about setting your printer up so when you send your images across you get what it is that you see on the screen of your computer. We'll look at paper choice. A lot of people ask me about what paper I use, and whilst paper is quite a personal choice, I do have some thoughts around when to choose what type of paper for what type of image, so we'll have a look at that. And then finally, what do you do with your images once they're printed? Because sometimes it would be expensive if you took every single one of those to the framer, so sometimes you just want a way where you can efficiently and effectively store your images, or you can give them away to friends and family or even sell them at your local market. So we'll have a look at all of those things today. Now, before I had a printer, I was sending my images off to a lab to get printed. And whilst that was fine, it was definitely more expensive. And the time that it took after I sent the image off to get it back was a bit like waiting for a roll of film to be developed. So I just took the plunge and decided I was going to buy a printer. Now, I did start with a nice cost-effective one, and I still have that, and that is the Epson SureColor P405. It's a relatively cheap printer. I think it's still available, and it's a basic printer, but it prints amazingly, when I consider the other types of printers that I've used in the past, which are just sort of home inkjet printers. This printer works really, really nice. Now, some of the downsides of owning your own printer, and this is something that I learned the hard way, is if you do not print on a regular basis, the print heads can dry up. And what this means is that you've got to go through a process of cleaning those print heads and hope that you can unblock them. Now, I've never had an instance where I haven't been able to, but I did have some instances where I've gone through nearly half a cartridge of ink to unblock the print head because it uses the ink as it unblocks it. And that might not sound like too much of a drama, but it's about $180 for a set of ink cartridges. And so if you go through half of that, you can see it's going to cost you a fair whack of money just getting your cartridges unblocked. But besides that, I absolutely love the whole process of printing at home. I try and print at least a 6x4, which is just a small print every single week so I can keep those ink heads nice and clean. And then it enables you to do things like, hang your art up in your own home, which I love doing. I've got heaps of it on my walls. You can give it away to friends and family if they love your images. You could print and just sell at your local markets. It just opens up so many other opportunities for you being able to print at home. And there's nothing quite like seeing your images in print. Well, I think so anyway. I love seeing my photos on paper, and that's why I love to print. So when it comes to choosing the image that you're going to print, of course, you can just pick one of your favorites. But what I love to do is quite often just see which ones are being, liked the most when I share them online, because I know that if I ever do decide to go to a market stall or something like that, that all the images that I've printed are going to be quite popular and there's a good chance they'll sell them. I haven't got any plans of doing that, but it's just one of the ways that I think. I go, if an image is popular, at least I know that if I ever try and sell it, I can. Or the other thing is, it's a good chance that if I give it away, the person that I give it to is going to love it just as much because it had a lot of likes. So this particular one here I took on the weekend, it's had nearly 1,000 likes already on my social media page. So I'm going to print this one. And yeah, I'll take you through the process. We're just going to print it as an A4 size, so nothing too huge. And I'll show you how I go about getting it ready for print, soft proofing, sending it to the printer, and then mounting it up on a foam core board, which is the final part of the process. So let's do it. So let's talk a little bit about getting your image ready for print. Now, of course, this is not an editing tutorial, so I'm hoping that you've got your editing done. But there's a few things you do need to consider before you hit the print button. First of all, is your monitor calibrated? One of the biggest complaints I hear from people printing their own photos at home is that their photos come out darker than what they saw on their screen. And the number one reason for that is because you've probably got your screen brightness up a lot higher than what it should be. And so you're seeing a brighter image on screen and you print it out and it comes out a lot darker. So there's a couple of solutions to that. One is that when you send the job to the printer, you can compensate for that by increasing the brightness from Lightroom through to the printer. So you're telling it to increase the brightness. Or the second option is just to calibrate your monitor. Turn your brightness right down. It'll look a bit funny when you first do it, but you'll get used to it. It'll actually be better for your eyes anyway. The next thing that I do is I always zoom right in on my images and I have a look around to see if there's any sort of spots or dust bunnies. Sometimes a lone star in the sky during sunrise or sunset can actually just be a burnt out white dot, so I'll clone that out. Just use that cloning tool or the healing tool and go through and just make sure you get rid of any of those spots. There's nothing worse than printing an image up large to find that there's a dust bunny in your sky or something like that, and they really do stand out when you put them behind glass. The third thing is just to think about sizing. So when it comes to sizing, I always crop my images so when I print them out, they'll fit in one of these pre-made frames. Now I buy these from an art and framing supply store, and they come in sort of standard sizes, and I'll show you that a little bit later. But you can sort of mount your picture on those, and the mat board and the backing board is all pre-cut, and they're just, you know, got these plastic sleeves, and this is typically how you would mount your images if you were going to sell them like at a markets or something like that. So the other thing is that if they're a standardized size, it's very easy to buy pre-made frames. So if you don't want to learn how to do picture framing and you don't want to pay a picture framer to frame all of your images, this is the most cost-effective way of doing it. So try and keep to standard sizes. Just use the drop-down menu in Lightroom when it comes to cropping. Rather than doing a custom crop, it's better to try and stick to one of those standardized sizes just from a cost-effective point of view. Now, when it comes to choosing printer paper, it is a very personal choice. As I said, I print a lot on these 4x6. These are just cheap HP glossy photo paper 6x4s, and these come or did come with the ink that I was buying for my printer that I use for business. And you know, I'm never going to use that printer to seriously print photos, so I just use these to run through the printer every now and then to make sure those heads are always nice and clean. So I'll take a shot, I'll just print it off. The other thing, it's a good way to do a test shot, you know, so if you just want to see you know, how your image is going to look or how the colors are going to come through, then I just tend to do that. Remember, if you don't have 6x4 and you just want to print smaller, you can always do it on a bigger piece of paper as well. So, you know, if you want to just get a photo printed, just keep your heads clean. You know, you're going to waste a whole piece of paper by doing that, but you could always print more than one if you wanted to as well on a big sheet of paper. The other thing to do then is sometimes it's a good idea to try different paper. Now, so this one here, for example, I didn't like the way the colors came out, so I chose a different paper. Where for this one here, I absolutely loved how it came out. Now, this is a fine art paper. I can't remember exactly which one this is now, but it'll probably be cold press bright, because that's probably my favorite, or cold press natural. I'll show you some of those in a second. But it just, you know, you can see there's no reflections of it. It is a very flat art paper. It's got a nice texture. The downside to this is that it scratches really easily. So the, you know, things like the black there behind the mushrooms marks really easily. But you can just say, I do a lot of this testing. This one here is on a semi-gloss sort of paper. And so a semi-gloss is quite good, a good all-round paper and a place to start. This one's a gloss paper, and you can probably straight away see the gloss that's on it, and I find that's too much. So what I suggest you do is find something like this. This is the Signature Worthy Sample Pack by Epson. A lot of people don't like the Epson papers because they do mark easily. But this one has all the, you know, it was about $30 and it had a heap of different things in here for you to try. And so that's what I suggest you do. So when it comes to picking the paper for you, if you go through and you do that, and what you'll do is you'll work out your favorites. And these are my favorites. I've got Cold Press Bright, so I've got a box of that, Cold Press Natural, and then Hot Press Bright. So they're the ones that I enjoy using the most. Although they're not the ones that I use exclusively. With my printer too, it gives me the option to print panoramic. So this is a roll of semi-gloss that I can put into the back of the printer, and it prints out a panoramic. And then, you know, you can get, mine goes up to what they call A3 plus, or this is Super A3, so it sort of gives you an idea of the size. You know, this is also a premium semi-gloss. So I really like premium semi-gloss as well. I think it works great on the bigger photos, but I really do like those art papers, but they get quite expensive as you go up to those bigger sizes. Typically I wait till Epson's got a sale on, and then I just order a stack of it and get it delivered to my house. But there you go, that's, you know, so choosing paper I think is really an individual thing. I would suggest get yourself one of those sample packs, and most of the companies have sample packs. Now when it comes to sending your image to the printer, so you've edited it up, you've got rid of all the dust bunnies and you're ready now to send it to the printer, you need to download what's called ICC profiles. Now these are some files that you import into your computer and they work with Lightroom and other, like in Photoshop, and they allow you to tick this button here, which is simulate paper and ink. And I have soft proofing turned on down the bottom here. And if you turn on soft proofing, it then shows you a representation of what it's going to look like, but you need to tick that simulate paper and ink. Now I don't know if you can see the difference that that's making is it's sort of removing contrast and it's making the image a bit flatter. Now the reason why you want to do that is as you make adjustments you can sort of see what it's likely to look like, and so you can make any adjustments you like over here on the adjustments panel and you'll get a bit of an idea of what it's going to look like. Now, it's not 100% because we're looking at a screen, we're not looking at the paper, but it gives you a bit of a guidance. Okay, so you just select from the list of papers that you've loaded and you pick what you want. So I've got cold press natural loaded in at the moment, which is a really nice fine art paper. For something like this with the water and the muted sky without much vibrant color, it's a really nice selection for this. I typically, if I have vibrant colors, I like to use cold press bright or even hot press bright, but I like the cold press ones, or I'll use semi-gloss. Semi-gloss works really well, so they're sort of my main go-to ones. This cold press natural, I don't have much of it and I wouldn't buy it again because it is really good, I think, for the muted tones, but you know, you might like it for vibrant color, I don't know, but this is what I like it for, so I'm going to use this one. Once you're sort of happy with that, you hit the print button at the top right hand corner, and it'll depend on what you see, but I've got only library, develop and print. But you hit print, you're going to get a bit of a print preview, and then you can start to just make your final adjustments, and you can add your margins if you want to change the margins for your images, so you can sort of see that you can move those around to make the image bigger or smaller, and that would be if you wanted to fit it within a different sized frame. Okay, so you could change that here in the printing, and what we're seeing is an actual print preview. This is not how it's going to look now, but just how the layout's going to look, so just keep that in mind. Print resolution, I have it at 240 pixels per inch. I'd never change it from that, and print sharpening I have on standard. I've never had it on anything else, I just keep it on standard and I haven't had any problems. Under color management, I've selected the paper, so I've got the cold press natural paper. And then my intent is perceptual. I don't really know what the perceptual and relative does. I can't see a lot of difference. Someone might correct me in the comments. But essentially that's what I do. And I always rotate my image so it sits here the way that I'm going to see it. So if it was a landscape image, it would be side on. Just the way I do it. Once you're happy with that, you just go into your printer dialog box and you just now need to go through into your properties and select everything to get your print sort of happening. So I've got cold press natural selected as my media type. I've told it its color. Print quality, I've got selected quality. Now this is important. Where it says mode, it's by default picks the printer to do color management. So I have to go in here and go off, no color management. Okay, I don't want the printer to do my color management. The rear fine art tray is where it's going to go in. It's A4 and I always tick borderless. As I said, I add the border in using the stroke feature of Lightroom if I want to do that. You just want to check you've got enough ink to print it out, and then once you're happy, you just press OK and you print, and away you go. So that's pretty much it. Pretty straightforward, and you'll be printing your images in no time. All right, so it's the moment of truth. Let's get our image off of the printer. Check that out. That is just sensational. And this is just, you know, it's wow. I'm happy with that. Just got to be careful. There's a little mark there. I'm actually going to put some gloves on so I can get the rest of this done. So I've got these white cotton gloves and it stops me from marking them. So let's get those on and then I'll show you how we go about mounting this up. All right, there we go. We get our white gloves on. Now the reason I wear those is because then I know that I'm less likely to mark the image, because this paper it marks really easily, especially if it's dark. So this one's not too bad, but if everyone that's dark, it's quite difficult. The next step is what I've got here is I've got a pre-cut matte board. Now matte board is essentially a frame, as you can see, and the edges are nicely beveled. So what that does is allows us to put our picture on. And then I've got this foam backing board here, and this is just you peel this off. I don't know how easy I can do that with these gloves on. I'll do it in a second. You peel that off and you can actually stick your image down. There's a bit of a technique to it. The end result is you'll end up with something like that. Okay, so you'll have a picture that is mounted on a backing board with a mat board around it that can be put into a standard size frame. So that'll fit straight into a standard size frame. So that's probably the best recommendation I can give you when it comes to mounting these things. And that way you know that it's not going to get damaged when you store it. Because what happens, unfortunately, is that paper, in particular these fine art papers, mark really easily. And if you store it even in a, you might have one of those art storage sort of, I don't know if you've seen those they're like a big envelope you put all your artwork in. Even putting new artwork in, the back of the paper can scratch this fine art paper. So you want to be really careful with this, and that's why what I like to do is I put in one of those and then I put a plastic sleeve over the top of it, and that way I know that it's protected forever. Once my image is printed, I now want to get it mounted. This is probably my favorite part of the process. I use a self-adhesive backing board. This is a foam core board that can be bought from art and framing supply centres. I use the grid lines on the front cover of the board to make sure my image is straight, as this is very hard to fix once it's mounted. I then use painter's masking tape to attach my image to the top protective cover. This prevents it from moving as I slowly peel back this protective cover, exposing the sticky side of the backing board. I then slowly stick my image down, making sure that I press it nice and firmly to ensure there's no bubbles as I adhere it to the backing board. Once the image is stuck on the backing board, it's now time to add our top frame. This is a matte board that has been cut out. Once again, available from art and framing supply centres. Unless you have your own matte board cutter, this is the easiest way to do it. Once that's all stuck down, the only thing left to do is to put the entire assembly inside of a plastic sleeve. This protects it from getting marked or any dust or anything that may contaminate the image in the future until it's ready to be framed. Of course, you can sell it like this, give it away, or you can find a frame to put it into. Well, needless to say, I'm pro printing your own photos at home. It has really changed my appreciation for the art that I make. And I only shot this image a few days ago, and I'm really glad that I chose to print this one up. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It is now fully mounted and is inside a plastic sleeve, so it's protected and ready for me to find a frame or make a frame to mount it, or I might just give it away, who knows. But anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, you know what to do. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. Leave your comments down below. Let me know if you found it helpful, and hopefully I've convinced you that if nothing else, you should be printing your images so you can get to see how they look when they're on paper, because it is vastly different to what you see on screen. All right, until next time, get out there and make some images. See ya.